Hey guys, tonight we're going to step through a door that, for countless women in the Middle Ages, was a one-way street. We're going to explore the quiet, grinding reality of life inside a medieval brothel. Forget the romanticized, swashbuckling tavern scenes you see in movies. The truth was far less glamorous and infinitely more, well, boringly terrifying. It was a life dictated by death, disease, and a profound lack of options. You probably wouldn't last a week. And that's not an insult. It's just a testament to how tough it was. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps the channel find other people like us, who enjoy drifting off to the stranger corners of the past. Go ahead and drop your city and the time in the comments below. It's always comforting to know where you all are listening from, scattered across the globe in the quiet of the night. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the cold. It's not just the damp night air seeping through your thin, worn-out tunic. It's a deep, bone-chilling cold that seems to radiate from the very stones of the alleyway. You're standing in front of a heavy oak door, its surface scarred by time and indifference. There's no ornate carving here, no welcoming lantern, just a small, grated peephole, dark and empty, like a blind eye. The only sign that this is a place of business is a faint, sweetish smell of stale wine, unwashed bodies, and something vaguely medicinal, all mingling with the ever-present stench of the gutter. Your hand is raised, knuckles hovering just inches from the wood. But you can't bring yourself to knock. Not yet. You're replaying the last few months in your head. A slideshow of grim little moments that led you to this specific, wretched threshold. Maybe it was the failed harvest. You remember the sight of the wheat stalks, thin and blighted, and the hollow look in your father's eyes. There wasn't enough to eat, let alone to pay the tithe to the church and the tax to the Lord. Or perhaps your husband, a good enough man, a cooper or a smith, caught a fever that swept through the parish, leaving you with 2 small children and a mountain of his debts. You tried to find work. You offered to mend clothes, to scrub floors, to help in the kitchens of the local mayor. But there were a dozen other desperate women for every one of those jobs. This is a fundamental truth of your world that is so common it's almost invisible for a woman alone. Survival is a razor's edge. A mainstream historical fact is that without a male provider, a father, a husband, a brother, a woman's economic standing was practically non-existent. You couldn't legally inherit most property, run a business on your own in most towns, or even represent yourself in court. You were legally unsocially tethered to a man. When that tether snapped, you were cast adrift, and so you stand here, your stomach a tight knot of hunger and fear. You think of your younger sister. The one thing your family had left was the hope of her making a good match, marrying a man with a bit of land. But that required a dowry, a pig, a few chickens, a bolt of linen, something, anything. Your family has nothing. This brings us to a sad, little-known detail of the time, the dowry crisis that affected many parts of late medieval Europe. As populations grew and land became scarcer, dowries became more important and more expensive for thousands of families. The inability to provide a suitable dowry for their daughters meant those girls would likely never marry, consigning them to a life of dependency and poverty. Your presence at this door might be the only thing that secures your sister's future, a grim sacrifice to ensure she never has to stand where you are now. You can hear faint sounds from inside, a man's gruff laugh, quickly shushed, the distant, tinny plucking of a lute, played without joy. Every sound makes you flinch. This wasn't a choice, not in the way we think of choices today. And that's a point historians still debate in hushed tones, the question of agency. Did any woman truly choose this life? Some scholars argue that in the largest cities, like Paris or London, a very small number of women might have seen prostitution as a grim but pragmatic alternative to starvation or an abusive marriage, a way to exert some tiny, fleeting control over their economic destiny. But for the vast majority, so are you, shivering in this dark alley. That idea is a bitter joke. The word choice implies options, and you've run out of those. Your only remaining path is through this door. You take a shaky breath, the cold air stinging your lungs. You close your eyes, picturing the faces you're trying to save, or perhaps the hunger you're trying to escape. The image gives you a sliver of resolve. Your knuckles, white and trembling, finally make contact with the rough grain of the wood. 1, 2, 3 soft, hesitant taps. The sound is swallowed by the night, but you know it was heard. For a long moment, there is only silence. Then, a scraping sound. A heavy bolt is being drawn back on the other side. The journey is about to begin. The door grounds open. Not wide, but just enough for you to slip through. You're pulled inside, and the door is shut and bolted behind you with a deafening thud. The sudden plunge into near darkness is disorienting. The air is thick and warm, heavy with the smells you sensed outside, but now they're overpowering. A single, sputtering tallow candle on a distant table fights a losing battle against the shadows, casting long, dancing figures on the grimy, rattling dub rows. The person who pulled you in is a woman, older than you, with a face that looks like it was carved from hard cheese and left out in the sun. She doesn't speak, merely jerks her head, indicating you should follow. You move deeper into the room. This is the main hall, the heart of the establishment. It's smaller than you imagined, and lower. The ceiling is crisscrossed with heavy, dark beams, so low that a tall man would have to stoop. A miserable-looking fire smolders in a wide hearth, producing more smoke than heat, which hangs in a permanent, hazy layer just above every owner's head. This is a very typical layout for a medieval urban building. Business on the ground floor, living quarters crammed into the floors above. This place might have been a tavern once, or a weaver's workshop. Now its purpose is different, but the structure remains the same. A few men are scattered around on rough, wooden benches, nursing clay cups. They look up as you enter, their eyes lingering for a moment before dismissing you. You are not yet on the menu. 3 other women are in the room. One is perched on the lap of a merchant, forcing a brittle laugh at something HES mumbled into her ear. Another stands by the fire, listlessly stirring a pot that smells of thin cabbage and onion. The third is sitting alone in a corner, mending a tear in her stocking, her face a mask of profound boredom. No one greets you. No one even acknowledges you beyond a flicker of the eyes. You are just another piece of inventory being brought into the warehouse. The older woman leads you past the hearth and toward a narrow, winding staircase in the back, the wood groaning under your combined weight. As you ascend, the sounds from the common room, the low murmur of conversation, the crackle of the fire, fade, replaced by a new set of sounds. You can hear coughing from one of the rooms above, a deep, rattling cough. You can hear the rhythmic creaking of a bed frame, and you can hear, faintly, the sounds of the city outside the shuttered windows, the clang of a distant blacksmith's hammer, the rumble of a cart over cobblestones. This is a strange and often misunderstood aspect of medieval life. While some cities made efforts to confine brothels to specific districts, the famous stews of Southwark in London, for example, the reality was often much messier. Historians still debate how effective this owning truly was. In many towns, these houses were simply part of the urban landscape, tucked between the baker and the candlemaker, hidden in plain sight. The sounds of everyday commerce and family life would bleed right through the walls, a constant, painful reminder of the world you've just left behind. You are both central to the city as life and utterly excluded from it. You reach the second floor. It's a long, narrow landing, colder than the room below. A series of rough wooden doors, or in some cases, just stained canvas curtains, line the corridor. Your guide shoves one of the doors open and gestures for you to enter. This is your new home. The room is little more than a cell, barely large enough for the sad excuse for a bed that occupies most of the space. There is no window. The only light comes from the corridor. The bed is a simple wooden frame with a lumpy sack laid across it. You don't need to touch it to know it's stuffed with straw, and probably a host of other things. The musty smell tells you the straw has been changed in a long time. Lice, fleas, and bedbugs were not just a nuisance in this era. They were a fact of life. And in a place like this, with so many transient bodies, your bed is less a place of rest and more a thriving ecosystem of tiny, biting things. You look down at the floor, at the dirty, treble brushes scattered across the rough planks. This is a curious, little-known detail of medieval housekeeping. People would strew rushes, reeds, and sweet-smelling herbs on the floor to absorb spills, mud, and whatever else was tracked in. In a wealthy home, they were changed regularly. Here, new rushes are just thrown on top of the old ones, creating a layered, compressed mat of filth, bones, grease, and forgotten spills. The floor is probably the dirtiest thing in the room. There is a single wooden peg on the wall. That's for your clothes. All of them. Your entire worldly possessions will hang from that one peg. There is no privacy, no comfort, no space that is truly yours. The walls are thin. You can hear every sound from the adjacent rooms. This is the physical reality of your new life. A tiny, borrowed space where you will perform the most intimate of acts in the most public and impersonal of settings. The cold you felt in the alleyway returns. A deep, internal chill. This isn't a temporary shelter. This is a trap, built of wooden plaster. The woman who laid you here looks at you, her expression unreadable. She has seen that look on your face 100 times before. After a moment of silence that feels like an eternity, she finally speaks, her voice raspy. The madam will want a word with you now. Don't keep her waiting. You follow the woman back down the creaking stairs, your legs feeling unsteady. The common room is a little more crowded now. A couple of soldiers have come in, their leather armor creaking as they sit down, loud and boisterous. They've brought the sharp, metallic smell of sweat and iron with them. The woman you're following doesn't lead you to the fire or to one of the benches. Instead, she guides you to a small, curtained-off alcove near the back, a space you hadn't even noticed before. She pulls the heavy, grease-stained curtain aside and nudges you forward. Behind the curtains, it's your new boss. We'll call her the madam, or the prioress, or the abbess. The titles vary, often taking on a darkly ironic, ecclesiastical flavor. She is seated in a surprisingly sturdy chair, a rare luxury in this house of benches and stools. Before her is a small, scarred table holding a cup of wine and a guttering candle that casts her face in a play of light and shadow. She is not what you expected. She isn't old and withered, nor is she a beautiful, fading courtesan. She's a woman in her 40s, with a hard, pragmatic face and eyes that miss nothing. This is a common historical reality. The keepers of brothels were often former prostitutes themselves, women who had survived the life and found the only available promotion. They knew the business from the inside out. She doesn't invite you to sit. You stand before her, feeling your worn-out shoes press into the filthy rushes on the floor. She looks you up and down, a slow, deliberate appraisal, like a butcher inspecting a side of meat. Her gaze is not lecherous, but something far more chilling. It's purely commercial. She is calculating your value. She notes your youth, the relatively clear skin, the fact that all of your teeth are still in your head. These are your primary assets. She also notes the fear in your eyes, the way your hands are clenched into fists. She sees your desperation. That is your primary liability, and her greatest advantage. What's your name? She asks. Her voice is low, not unkind, but devoid of any warmth. You tell her your name. That's a nice name, she says, taking a slow sip of wine. We won't be using it. Here, you'll be, let's see, Marguerite. She assigns you a new name as casually as one might name a stray cat. This was a common practice. It served two purposes. First, it provided a degree of anonymity, a thin veil between your old life and your new one. Second, and more importantly, it was an act of rebranding, of possession. Your old identity, the one tied to your family and your past, is being erased. You are now a product, and she has just given you your brand name. She then lays out the rules of the house. They are simple, direct, and non-negotiable. You will work when she tells you to work. You will accept any client she assigns to you, regardless of his age, his sobriety, his hygiene. You will not refuse. You will not steal. Any money you receive from a client is not yours. It belongs to the house. You will give every last coin to her at the end of the night. You will not keep tips. You will not have favorites or form any kind of personal attachment to the clientele. She talks about cleanliness, which is a grimly ironic topic given the state of the building. You are to wash yourself from a bucket of cold water every day. This wasn't about your comfort. It was about protecting the clients and, by extension, her investment. Historians studying medieval civic records have found surprisingly detailed regulations for brothels in some cities, many of which focus on hygiene. The Town Council of Sandwich, in England, for instance, had rules stipulating that the women had to be inspected for signs of disease, particularly leprosy and the unmentionable sickness. This wasn't public health in the modern sense. It was quality control. The madam explains the consequences of breaking the rules. For a minor infraction, a bit of back talk, a moment of sullenness, you might forfeit your dinner. For something more serious, like hiding a coin, the punishment would be a beating, not a furious, passionate beating, but a cold, methodical one, administered privately, away from the eyes of the clients. Her authority in this house is absolute. The law, which operates just outside the door, has very little interest in what happens to you in here. The extent to which a brothel keeper could legally discipline the women under her is a point of some academic debate. While city ordinances often gave them official power to fine or evict women, the reality of physical punishment likely existed in a legal gray area, officially frowned upon, but unofficially tolerated as a necessary part of keeping order. Finally, she gets to the most important part of the conversation. You need clothes, she says, her eyes flicking over your drab, country tunic, and you owe me for your bed and your first week's food. And for the name I just gave you. I'm a generous woman. I'll provide you with what you need. A dress, some decent shoes, a ribbon for your hair. But you owe me for it. I'll keep a record. You can work it off. This is the moment the true nature of your situation crystallizes. You didn't just walk in here for a job. You just walked into a debt trap. The madam isn't just your boss. She is now your sole creditor. She controls your income, your expenses, and the ledger that keeps track of it all as she speaks. You realize that the heavy oak door at the front of the house wasn't just to keep the cold out. It was to keep you in. The room suddenly feels much smaller. The air thicker. The candle on her table seems to mock you with its tiny, flickering flame. A small, warm thing in a vast, encroaching darkness. She dismisses you with a wave of her hand. Go find Agnes, the woman who brought you in. She'll get you settled. Agnes finds you hovering uncertainly at the edge of the common room. Her expression is as sour as before, but now you understand it better. It's the face of someone who has seen this story play out countless times. She grabs your arm, her grip surprisingly strong, and pulls you toward the back of the house, to a small, cluttered room behind the kitchen area. This is her domain, the administrative hub of this squalid little enterprise. Here, she hands you a piece of parchment and a charcoal stick. Or maybe it's not parchment. More likely, it's a sheet of low-quality vellum, or even just a smoothed piece of wood, because good writing materials are expensive. On it are a series of crude drawings and symbols next to a list of names. This is the house ledger, the record of debt. The madam may be the one who sets the terms, but it's women like Agnes, the enforcers, who manage the day-to-day accounting. She finds the name Marguerite that has been freshly added to the list. This is you, she says, her finger pressing down on the name. She then begins to list your debts, making a mark for each one. For your lodging this week, she says, making a small cross. For your food, another cross. For the wood to heat the water to wash, another. Then she pulls out a dress from a chest in the corner. It's not new. The color, once a vibrant red, has faded to a muddy rust. There are signs of mending near the collar and a faint wine stain on the skirt. But compared to your own clothes, it's a piece of finery. For the dress, she says, making a much larger mark next to your name. And the shoes, she adds, pointing to a pair of worn leather slippers. Another mark. You are watching your future being written down in a series of charcoal scratches. This is the moment you sign your contract, not with a flourish of a quill, but with your silent, powerless consent. The historical reality of prostitution in the Middle Ages is inextricably linked to this concept of debt bondage, where formal, written contracts between a prostitute and a brothel keeper were rare. Literacy was low, and such a document would have questionable legal standing. These informal debt ledgers were the true chains. They were almost impossible to escape. The prices were, of course, entirely arbitrary and set by the madam. A cup of watered-down wine might be charged to your account at the price of the finest vintage. A loaf of stale bread would be marked down as a feast. And because you were likely illiterate, you had no way of contesting the account. You couldn't read the ledger. You had to take Ignis' word for it. This one-sided accounting is what kept women trapped for years, sometimes for their entire lives. Every small necessity, every bit of ribbon, every extra scrap of food just added another mark to the tally, digging the hole of your debt a little deeper. Now for a rather bizarre little detail about medieval contracts that puts this all in perspective. In the legitimate world of commerce, legal agreements were often solidified through symbolic actions. A seller of land might hand the buyer a clump of earth and a twig from the property. Sometimes, contracts were written in duplicate on a single piece of parchment, which was then cut in half with a unique, jagged line and indenture. The only way to prove the contract was to fit the two halves back together. Your contract here has no such cleverness. It is a one-sided declaration of what you owe, held by the very person who profits from your inability to pay it back. The academic world still argues about the nuances of this system. Was it universally and ruthlessly applied in every single establishment? Some historians, looking at court records where women sued their former masters, a rare but not unheard of event, suggest that there might have been some establishments, perhaps smaller ones run by a single woman, where the arrangement was slightly less predatory. A woman might work to pay off a specific, agreed-upon sum and then be allowed to leave. But these cases appear to be the exception. For the majority of women, especially in the larger, more organized urban brothels, the debt ledger was a life sentence. Agnes shoves the dress and shoes into your arms. Change, she commands, gesturing to a corner of the room. There's no screen, no privacy. You awkwardly turn your back and peel off your old, familiar tunic, the one that smells of wood smoke in your family's cottage. It feels like shedding your own skin. You pull on the new dress. The fabric is rough against your skin, and it carries the faint, ghostly scent of the woman who wore it before you. You wonder what happened to her. Did she pay off her debt and leave? Did she run away? Or did she simply get too sick or too old to be of use anymore? The dress doesn't offer any answers. As you stand there in your new uniform, you feel a profound sense of dislocation. You look in the crack, cloudy piece of polished metal that serves as a mirror. The person staring back at you is not yourself. She looks brighter, more garish. She looks like she belongs here. This is exactly the point. The clothes are not just a debt. They are a costume, designed to transform you into the role you are now expected to play. Agnes gives a grunt of something that might be approval. Now you look the part. She says, "The madam says you'll start tonight. Don't be clumsy." She leads you out of the storeroom, back toward the noise and the smoke of the common room. Your first night of work is about to begin, and you are already in debt. Back in the common room, the atmosphere has grown louder, smokier. More men have arrived, and the three women you saw earlier are busy. One is now playing that sad-sounding lute, her fingers moving mechanically over the strings, while a group of wool merchants sings along. Off-key, the woman who was mending her stocking is now sitting with the two soldiers, laughing at their loud jokes, her mending forgotten. It's a performance. You realize everyone is playing a part. The men are playing the part of the carefree spenders, the masters of their world. The women are playing the part of the willing, cheerful companions. And now, you must learn your role. Agnes gives you a shove toward the center of the room, an unspoken command to make yourself useful. You stand there for a moment, frozen with indecision and fear, a deer caught in the flickering candlelight. This is when one of the other women approaches you. She's the one who was stirring the pot by the fire earlier. She looks a little older than you, maybe 20, but her eyes hold a weariness that makes her seem ancient. Her name, you'll learn later, is Isabel. You're the new one, she says. It's not a question. Marguerite, is it? You nod, surprised she knows the name the madam gave you. News travels fast in this small, enclosed world. Stay out of the madam's way. Give her every coin, and don't drink the wine the clients buy you unless you water it down first. It's the first piece of genuine advice you receive. It's not offered with warmth, but with a kind of resigned pragmatism. These women are your new family, of a sort, a deeply dysfunctional, competitive, and codependent family. They are your immediate tribals for the attention of the clients, which translates directly into the favor of the madam. If you earn more, you might get a slightly better meal. If you become a client's favorite, you might receive a small gift, which you'd have to hide, at great risk. This competition was an intentional part of the brothel's structure, a way to keep the women divided and focused on pleasing the management. A mainstream historical view is that solidarity was actively discouraged. But, at the same time, these women are your only possible allies. They are the only ones who understand the crushing reality of your daily existence. They will teach you the unwritten rules, which clients are rough, which are sad, which are prone to not paying. They will show you how to feign pleasure, how to steer a conversation away from your past, how to spot the signs of disease. This strange duality, competitor and confidant, define the relationships within the house. They might steal your meager dinner one day and help you staunch a bleeding lip the next. You observe them, trying to learn. You see the way Isabel subtly refills a client's cup, making sure it's never empty, keeping him spending. You see the way the lute player, Eleanor, smiles with her mouth but not with her eyes. You see the third woman, Jane, endure a casual, demeaning grope from one of the soldiers with a practiced flinch that she quickly turns into a playful swat. It's a complex dance of survival. Here's a small, curious detail about medieval social structures that sheds light on this. Guilds were a cornerstone of urban life. Weavers, bakers, carpenters, they all had guilds to protect their members, set standards, and provide mutual support. Prostitutes, in a strange, unofficial way, sometimes formed their own informal guilds. Historians have found records in some cities of prostitutes banding together to, for example, collectively petition the town council for protection against violent clients or to set certain ground rules among themselves. This wasn't a union in the modern sense, but it was a flicker of collective action in a world designed to isolate them. The question of how much real power these informal groups held is, of course, a subject of ongoing scholarly discussion. Could they truly protect their members, or was it just a way to manage their own exploitation? The women in this house are a microcosm of that. They are not formally organized, but a clear hierarchy exists. There is a pecking order, determined by age, beauty, and favor with the madam. You are at the absolute bottom. You are the newcomer, the one who knows nothing, the one who will get the worst tasks and the least desirable clients. You can see it in the way the others look at you. You are a threat, a new horse in the stable, but you are also a reflection of what they once were, a reminder of their own first day. A man at a corner table, a traveling peddler by the look of his dusty clothes, catches your eye. He beckons you over. Your heart hammers against your ribs. You look toward Isabel. She gives you a barely perceptible nod, a silent push. This is it. This is the start. As you walk toward him, your new leather slippers feeling clumsy on your feet, you are acutely aware of the other women watching you. They are not watching with pity or malice, but with a kind of detached, professional curiosity. They are watching to see if you will learn the steps to the dance. Will you be quick? Will you be clever? Will you survive? Or will you be just another girl who passes through these doors and is swallowed whole by the house? The peddler smiles, showing a row of yellowed teeth. You try to smile back, the muscles in your face feeling stiffened unfamiliar. The performance has begun. The morning after your first night is a brutal awakening. There is no gentle transition from sleep to wakefulness. You are jolted from a shallow, restless slumber by the sound of Agnes shouting from the ground floor. There's no lying in, no quiet moment to yourself. The business of the house doesn't pause for rest. You sit up on your straw-stuffed mattress, your back aching from the lumpy surface. The cell-like room is cold and smells stale. The cheap red dress you were given is crumpled on the floor where you dropped it. Exhausted, just a few hours ago. You pull on your old, familiar tunic for now. The work clothes are for the evening. You stumble out into the corridor and down the stairs. The common room, which was a loud, smoky den of forced merriment last night, is now a scene of quiet, grim labor. The air is sour, with the smell of spilled ale and cold smoke. The fire in the hearth has been reduced to a pile of gray ash. One of the women, Jane, is on her hands and knees, scrubbing the floorboards with a coarse brush and a bucket of murky water. Another, Eleanor, is at the main table, picking weevils out of a sack of flour. This is the unglamorous reality. Your days are not your own any more than your nights are. A historical fact often overlooked in dramatic portrayals is that prostitutes were not just prostitutes. In most establishments, they were also the domestic servants. They were the maids, the cooks, the laundresses. The madam and her enforcers didn't do the menial work. That was for the women who were also earning on their backs. This double duty was part of the economic engine of the brothel. The madam didn't have to hire separate staff. She simply exploited her existing employees for all their labor. Day and night, Agnes sees you and points to a stack of dirty wooden wrenches and clay cups piled high near the hearth. Wash these. She grunts. The water in the bucket is freezing cold. There's no soap, just a handful of sand to use as a scouring agent. As you dip your hands in, the cold shoots up your arms. You scrub at the hardened grease and grime, your fingers growing numb. The peddler from last night flashes in your mind, his clammy hands, the smell of cheap wine on his breath. You push the memory away. You focus on the repetitive motion of scrubbing, the rough texture of the wood under the sand. This is your new morning routine. There is no gentle bird song, no warm bread, just chores, cold water, and the quiet resentment of the other women. The breakfast, when it finally comes, is a testament to your place in this house. The madam and Agnes eat first, seated at the main table. They might have a piece of cheese, perhaps even a bit of bacon if business was good. After they are finished, the working women are allowed to eat. You line up while Isabel ladles a gray, lumpy porridge into your bowl. It's thin and tasteless, made from oats and water, maybe with a few scraps of yesterday's cabbage thrown in. You eat it standing up, quickly, because the chores are not finished. Here's a small, poignant detail about medieval food that highlights your situation. Salt was a valuable commodity. It was a preservative, a flavor enhancer, a necessity. The quality and availability of salt on your table was a direct indicator of your social status. The salt cellar on a lord's table was oft an elaborate piece of silver. You, however, eat your porridge and slat. The blandness is a constant, physical reminder of your poverty. Your food is merely fuel to get you through the day's work and ready for the night's. You have to wonder, what did these women think about during these long, quiet hours of drudgery? What was going through their minds as they scrubbed floors or mended clothes? This is a question historians can only speculate on, as the personal thoughts of these women were almost never recorded. We have court records, civic ordinances, and moralizing religious texts, but we don't have their diaries. Did they gossip? Did they share stories of their homes? Or did they retreat into a protective silence, a mental fortress to endure the day? The academic consensus, based on the sheer trauma and monotony of the life, leans toward the latter. It was likely a state of psychological survival, a dulling of the senses to get through the hours. After the washing and the cleaning, there are clothes to be mended. You sit with the other women in a circle, the weak morning light filtering in through the dirty shutters. You are handed a needle and thread. You are all repairing the work clothes, the red dress, a green kirtle, a yellow gown, a tear in the fabric, a popped seam. These clothes are valuable assets to the madam, and they must be maintained. As you clumsily push the needle through the rough fabric, you notice the hands of the other women. Isabella's fingers are deft and quick. Eleanor's are callous. Jean has a burn mark on her wrist from a stray ember. These hands tell the story of their lives here. The morning bleeds into the afternoon. The work is endless. Empty the chamber pots into the street gutter. Haul more water from the public well. Turn the straw in the mattresses. A task that releases a cloud of dust and tiny insects. There is no break, no moment of peace. The day is a long, slow, grinding preparation for the night. You are being physically worn down, made tired, so that your will to resist, to even think, is eroded. The madam doesn't appear until midday. She inspects your work with a critical eye, finds fault in the way a floor was scrubbed, and assigns an extra task as punishment. It's all part of the system. The control is constant, meticulous, and designed to remind you, every waking moment, who you belong to. The sun begins to set outside, and you know the cycle is about to begin again. It's time to put on the red dress. As the afternoon light begins to fade, a new ritual begins. Agnes lays out the work clothes. Your red dress is there, along with the others. It's time to shed the drab domestic servant and become the tavern wench. This transformation is not just for you. It's a signal to the whole house that the nature of the labor is about to change. You take off your simple tunic and pull on the uniform. The fabric feels different now that you know what it represents. It's a costume, and wearing it feels like putting on a heavy, invisible chain. The clothes themselves are a fascinating piece of social history. In many medieval towns and cities, prostitutes were legally required to distinguish themselves through their dress. This wasn't about fashion. It was about marking them, setting them apart from honest women. The laws varied from place to place, creating a strange patchwork of enforced style. In Bristol, England, they had to wear striped hoods. In Marseille, France, it was a striped cloak. In some German cities, they were forced to wear yellow, a color that would later be used to mark other outcast groups. The most common requirement, however, was the color red. Red was the color of passion, of sin, of the flames of hell. It was a visual brand, a walking symbol of their trade. Your red dress, therefore, is not a choice. It's a mandate. It makes you instantly identifiable to any man on the street. It's a label that screams your profession, stripping away any ambiguity about who you are and what you are for. This legal requirement is a well-documented historical fact. The purpose was twofold. First, to prevent prostitutes from, in the eyes of the law, deceiving men or passing as respectable wives or daughters. Second, it was a form of public shaming, a way for the moral majority to police the boundaries of their society. But here's a quirky, contradictory little detail. While the law demanded you wear these markers, they could also become a strange source of status within the subculture of the brothel. The madam might reward a favored woman with a slightly better dress, a brighter shade of red, or even a forbidden accessory like a silk ribbon, which was often technically illegal for prostitutes to wear under some PTU laws. These small distinctions became a vital part of the internal hierarchy. The quality of your uniform signaled your standing with the madam and your success with the clients. It was a perverse kind of pride, a way of finding status in a statusless existence. Historians still debate the effectiveness and the lived experience of these clothing laws. Did all prostitutes obey them at all times? Probably not. Court records show women being fined for not wearing their identifying clothes, suggesting they tried to blend in when they could, to walk through the market for an hour as an anonymous woman. And on the flip side, some scholars argue that these distinctive clothes might have occasionally been used defiantly, a way of brazenly owning their identity in a world that condemned them. For you, however, in this house, under the madam's thumb, there is no choice. You will wear the red dress. Once dressed, there's the matter of your hair and face. Agnes comes around with a small pot of something greasy and red. It's a crude form of lip and cheek stain, likely made from animal fat mixed with a pigment like ochre, or a plant root like cocaine tea. She dabs a smear on your cheeks and lips. Roughly, the effect is not subtle. It's meant to give you a look of flush, healthy vitality, an illusion of excitement. It feels sticky and smells faintly rancid. Your hair, which you normally wear in a simple braid, must now be worn down. Loose. For a respectable woman to wear her hair unbound in public was a sign of madness or mourning. For you, it's a professional requirement, another signal of your availability and your moral looseness. You look at yourself again in that cloudy piece of polished metal. The transformation is complete. The girl from the country who arrived yesterday is gone. In her place is Marguerite, a creature of the house, painted and costumed for her role. You see the other women undergoing the same ritual. Isabel applies her own rouge with a practiced hand, knowing exactly how much to use. Alien or combs out her long, dark hair, her expression blank. Jane, already dressed, is adjusting the neckline of her gown, a neckline cut lower than any respectable woman would dare to wear. This act of dressing up is the final barrier to be crossed each day. It's a mental shift. You are putting on your armor, or perhaps your chains. You are preparing your body and mind for the hours ahead. It's a dehumanizing process, turning you from a person into a product, an object to be consumed. And as you stand there, the cheap perfume of the rouge filling your nostrils, you hear the first heavy footsteps on the stairs. The evening's clients are beginning to arrive. The performance is about to begin anew, and you are wearing its costume. As the first clients trickle in, you begin to understand the brutal, unvarnished economics of this place. The madam takes her seat in her curtained-off alcove, the command center of the operation. Agnes stands guard near the door, a silent, intimidating presence. Your job is to make the men spend money. It's that simple, and that complicated. The price of your time is not something you negotiate. It's set by the madam. A mainstream historical fact is that brothels often had a fixed price list, sometimes even one that was officially sanctioned by the town council. This was part of the attempt to regulate the trade. A man knew what he was paying for, and it prevented individual women from undercutting each other or trying to charge exorbitant rates. The price for a turn with a woman was often surprisingly low, roughly equivalent to the price of a chicken or a day's wages for a skilled laborer. It was an affordable commodity. So, a man comes in, let's say HES, a mason working on the new cathedral spire. He has a few extra coins in his pouch. He chooses you. He doesn't give the money to you. He pays the madam or Agnes directly. That coin disappears into her purse. You see none of it. You are led upstairs to your small, cold room. After the brief, impersonal encounter, you lead him back downstairs. That's the basic transaction. The house gets the money. You get to keep your place in the house and not be thrown out into the street. But the real money, the profit, isn't just in this basic transaction. It's in the extras. The Madam-S business model relies on upselling. This is where you come in. Before the man goes upstairs, you are expected to convince him to buy a cup of wine, or two, or a whole pitcher. The wine is, of course, terrible, watered down, sour, and cheap, but it's sold at a premium. The profit margin on the wine is likely higher than the profit on your time. You are also expected to encourage him to buy you a drink. As Isabel warned you, you are to drink very little of it. You might have a second cup hidden, filled with water, that you discreetly sip from, or you learn to toss the wine over your shoulder into the rushes when HES not looking. Wasting the wine is better than becoming drunk and vulnerable. This brings us to a weird, little-known aspect of medieval tavern life that applies here, the alewife's thumb. It was a common complaint that female brewers and tavern keepers would use a false bottom in their mugs or stick their thumb into the pitcher as they poured to shortchange the customer. Whether this was a widespread practice or just a misogynistic trope is debated, but the principle of selling less for more was universal. In this house, the deception is part of the business plan. You are the bait, but the wine, the food, the illusion of a good time, that's where the real money is made. The ledger that Agnes keeps is not just a record of your debts, it's also a record of your earnings. At the end of the night, the madam will tally up how much each woman brought in, not just in the fees for her time, but in wine sales, food sales, everything. This created a fiercely competitive environment. If Jean got a client to buy a whole pitcher of wine and you only managed one cup, that would be noted. Consistent underperformers might be punished with smaller meals, worse chores, or the most difficult clients. You are constantly being evaluated. Your worth measured in the clink of coins. The fundamental question of who actually profited from prostitution is something historians have studied extensively. The answer is clear. Almost everyone, except the prostitute herself, the madam, obviously, took the lion's share. The city or the local lord often profited by levying taxes on the brothel. Records from London show the Bishop of Winchester getting rich off the rents from his properties in the Southwark dues. The brewers who supplied the cheap wine profited. The butchers who sold the leftover scraps of meat for the stew profited. The entire local economy, in a small but significant way, was lubricated by the money spent in these establishments. You are the foundational commodity of a small but robust supply chain, and you are the only part of that chain that is being consumed as you sit with a client, perhaps a young apprentice, trying to act more worldly than he is. You force a smile and ask if he'd like another drink. You praise his cleverness, his strength. You are learning to be an actress, a saleswoman, a psychologist. You are selling an illusion, the illusion of admiration, of desire, of a good time. Every coin he puts on the table is a victory, but it's a victory that belongs to someone else. The money passes through your hands, but it never sticks. At the end of the night, you will be exhausted, your throat sore from talking and fake laughing, your body aching. You will hand over every last penny to Agnes. She will count it, make a mark in the ledger, and you will climb the stairs to your straw bed, no richer than you were when the night began, but perhaps, if you were successful, a little less in debt, or, more likely, you just managed to pay off the interest on the clothes on your back. The moment you've been dreading arrives. The madam nods in your direction, then gestures toward a man who has been sitting alone, watching you. Ain't she? Has not young, not old. Ain't she as not a boisterous soldier or a flashy merchant. Ain't she as a quiet man, a weaver perhaps, judging by the calluses on his hands and the faint smell of lanolin that clings to him. He has paid his coin to Agnes. It's time. Your heart feels like a frantic bird trapped in your ribcage. This is your first time, the first client. The other experiences in your past, maybe a clumsy, fumbling encounter with a boy from your village, or the marital duties you performed for your husband, have no connection to this. This is different. This is a commercial transaction. It's work. You get up from your bench, your legs feeling like they're filled with sand. You try to remember the advice you've gleaned from watching the other women. You attempt to smile. It feels like a grimace. The weaver doesn't smile back. He just stands up and waits for you to lead the way. The common room, which felt so large and chaotic, suddenly feels small and intensely focused. You feel as though every eye is on you, but when you dare to glance around, no one is paying attention. The lute player is still plucking her mournful tune. Isabel is deep in conversation with a client. This is routine for them. Your terror is private, mundane. You lead him to the narrow, winding staircase. The wood groans under his heavier tread. The walk up those stairs feels like a mile. With each step, the thin layer of professional detachment you've been trying to build cracks a little more. You are acutely aware of his presence behind you, his breathing, the scuff of his shoes. You are leading him to your room, that tiny, windowless cell with the lumpy straw bed. You push open the door and step inside. The room is even smaller and more depressing with the people in it. There's no candle in here. The only light spills in from the corridor. You don't want to look at him. You stare at the single wooden peg on the wall, at the rough texture of the plaster. You can hear everything. You can hear the murmur of conversation from the room next door, the one with the canvas curtain. You can hear the distant clang of a cup from downstairs. There is no privacy here. The lack of it is part of the experience, a constant reminder that this space is not yours, that this moment is not intimate. It's a function of the building. This brings up a mainstream historical point about medieval urban living. Privacy was a luxury few could afford. Most families lived in 1 or 2 rooms. People were born, slept, and died in the same space, often with multiple generations crammed together. The modern concept of a private bedroom was reserved for the very wealthy. In a brothel, this lack of privacy was amplified. The very architecture of the building was designed for rapid turnover, not comfort. The thin walls, the shared spaces, it was all part of the efficient, impersonal nature of the business. The man is silent. He's probably as uncomfortable as you are, though for different reasons. For him, this might be a moment of shame, a hurried act hidden from his wife and his priest. For you, it's a moment of profound dissociation. You try to disconnect your mind from your body. You focus on something, anything else. The pattern of the wood grain on the door, the sound of a dog barking in the street outside. You try to make yourself small, to retreat to that quiet fortress in your mind that you are just beginning to learn how to build. Here's a small, sad detail about the experience that is rarely discussed. The silence. While we imagine these encounters might be filled with crude talk, the reality for many was likely awkward and quiet. You are two strangers, from different worlds, brought together for a brief, functional act. There's no script for this. What is there to say? He doesn't know your real name. You don't know his. The silence is broken only by the necessary, mechanical sounds of the act itself. The question of consent in this context is a complex one that historians and philosophers continue to grapple with. Legally, you have consented by being in this house, but is it true consent when the alternative is starvation? Is it consent when you are trapped by debt? Is it consent when you have no power to refuse this specific man at this specific time? Most modern scholars would argue that it is not. You are not a willing participant. You are an employee following orders. Your body is the tool of your trade, and at this moment, you are simply doing your job. The encounter is mercifully brief. It's clumsy, impersonal, and devoid of any emotion other than your own tightly controlled fear. As soon as it's over, the man gets up, adjusts his clothes, and without a word, he leaves the room. He is already heading back down the stairs, back to his wife, his work, his family. You will likely forget your face by morning. You remain in the room for a moment, alone in the near darkness. The room smells of him now. You sit on the edge of the lumpy mattress, and a wave of something cold and hollow washes over you. It's not just fear anymore. It's a deep, soul-crushing weariness. You have crossed a line, and you know, with a dreadful certainty, that you can never go back. You take a slow, shaky breath. Then you stand up, smooth down your red dress, and force yourself to walk out of the room, back to the corridor, back towards the stairs. Downstairs, there will be other men. The night is still young. Your work is not yet done. Downstairs, the common room is a churning sea of faces. In the hours and nights that follow, these faces begin to blur into a single, composite image of your clientele. But if you look closely, if you force yourself to pay attention, you can start to sort them into categories. Learning to read the men who walk through the door becomes a crucial survival skill. First, there are the students. They travel in packs, loud and full of a nervous, intellectual bravado. They come from the nearby university, their heads filled with Aristotle and Ovid, and their purses filled with a bit of money from their families back home. They are often the most difficult clients in a specific way, not necessarily violent, but arrogant and condescending. They see you not as a person, but as a philosophical concept, a vessel for sin they can write bad Latin poetry about later. They like to argue, to show off their learning, to treat you as part of their education in the ways of the world. This is a well-documented historical phenomenon. The connection between universities and prostitution in the Middle Ages was so strong that in cities like Oxford and Paris, there were constant clashes and regulations trying to keep the students and the fallen women apart, usually with little success. Then you have the soldiers. They are easier to understand. They are loud, often drunk, and their desires are straightforward. They smell of leather, sweat, and the road. They treat the brothel like an extension of their barracks, a place to release the tension and fear that comes with their profession. They can be rough, their hands calloused from sword hilts and spear shafts, and they are prone to sudden flashes of anger or melancholy. You learn to be wary around them, to laugh at their jokes, and to never, ever challenge their pride, they pay in whatever coin they have, sometimes in goods swiped from a village they passed through. Their presence is a double-edged sword for the madam. They are reliable customers, but they are also the most likely to start a brawl that could wreck the furniture and attract the attention of the city watch. The merchants and craftsmen, like your first client, are another breed entirely. They are oft quieter, more discreet. They are local men, with wives and children and reputations to protect. They come in looking for an escape from their daily lives, from a nagging spouse or the pressures of their business. They are often sadder than the others, their brief time with you tinged with guilt. They might talk a little, complaining about the price of wool, or a deal that went sour. With them, part of your job is to be a sympathetic ear, to nod along and offer another cup of wine. They are the bedrock of the madam's business, steady, reliable, and less likely to cause trouble. And then, most controversially, there are the men of the cloth. This is a historical reality that the medieval church spent centuries trying unfailing to stamp out. Priests, monks, and even high-ranking church officials were regular visitors to brothels. The requirement of clerical celibacy was, for many, a rule to be broken in the shadows. The presence of a priest in a brothel was the town's worst-kept secret. He might arrive late at night, his face obscured by a hood, but everyone knew. This creates a staggering hypocrisy that hangs over the entire enterprise. The same church that condemns you from the pulpit as a sinner, a daughter of Eve, a gateway to hell, is also a source of your clientele. The priest who hears your reluctant confession, if you are even allowed to confess, might be a man you saw in the common room just last night. This uncomfortable truth leads to a strange, almost unbelievable historical tidbit. In some places, the local church itself was the landlord of the brothel. The Bishop of Winchester's London's dues are the most famous example, but it wasn't unique. The church would justify this by claiming it was better to regulate and contain sin than to have it spill out all over the city. The income, they argued, could be used for good works. The moral gymnastics required to maintain this position is something historians still marvel at. The academic debate he reasoned if it happened, but how the individuals involved reconciled these glaring contradictions in their own minds. Learning to navigate these different types of men is your new craft. You learn that the student wants to feel clever, so you feign ignorance. The soldier wants to feel strong, so you feign admiration. The merchant wants to feel understood, so you feign sympathy. The priest wants to feel forgiven, and that is a service you cannot provide. Each man wants a different reflection of himself, a different illusion. You become a mirror, showing them what they want to see. This constant performance is exhausting. It requires you to be hypervigilant, to read subtle cues in a man's posture, his tone of voice, the way he holds his cup. Your safety and your earnings depend on it. You see the older women do it effortlessly. You watch Isabel calm a drunken soldier with a low word and a gentle touch. You see Ailey deflect a student's pretentious questions with a witty, practiced remark. They have learned the art of managing men, an art born of grim necessity. As you stand by the smoky fire, waiting for the next client to choose you, you scan the faces in the room. You are no longer just seeing men. You are seeing types, patterns, risks, and opportunities. You are learning to see your world through the cold, calculating eyes of a survivor. As you become more accustomed to the rhythms of the house, you start to learn the second language of this place, the language of silence, gestures, and coded words. It's a vocabulary of survival, spoken between the women when the madam or her clients aren't listening. It's a language of raised eyebrows, subtle headshakes, and quiet warnings. You learn, for instance, that if Isabel casually scratches her nose when a new client walks in, it's a signal. It means HES known to be rough. A bruiser. It's a warning to be on your guard, to be pliant, and to not provoke him. If alien or taps her cup twice on the table, it means the city watch is patrolling nearby, a reminder to keep the noise down and avoid any overt trouble. If Jean smooths her dress down in a particular way, it might mean a client is a weeper, one of a sad, lonely man who will spend more time talking about his miserable life than anything else. He's harmless, but he will drain your energy and likely not spend much money. This secret communication is your most valuable tool. It's a safety net, woven from shared experience and mutual, if grudging, reliance. This is a historical aspect of marginalized communities that is almost impossible to find in written records, but sociologists and historians agree it must have existed. These hidden transcripts, as they are sometimes called, are the private conversations and signals that oppressed groups use to navigate their world, a way of pushing back against the official, public transcript of submission. Beyond gestures, there's the jargon of the trade. You learn the slang. A quiet isn't just a quiet. He might be a Cully or a John. The act itself is given a host of euphemisms, from the agricultural, plowing the field, to the commercial, doing business. This slang serves a purpose beyond just colorful language. It creates a professional distance. By using these code words, you are reinforcing the idea that this is a job, a craft, with its own set of terms. It helps to separate the act from any personal meaning, to keep your inner self protected from the work your body is doing. It's a linguistic while you build around your soul. One of the most important things you learn is the art of the little lie. You are constantly inventing a backstory for yourself, a narrative that is both plausible and uninteresting. When a client asks where you're from, you don't tell him the truth. You don't speak of your village, your family, the failed harvest. To share that truth would be to give him a piece of your real self, a piece of your vulnerability. So you invent a story. You're from a town 100 miles away. You were an orphan. You came to the city to find work as a seamstress. The story is bland, generic, and it shuts down further questions. All the women have a story like this. Sometimes they coordinate them so they don't contradict each other. Here's a curious, related detail from the wider medieval world. The importance of storytelling. In an age of widespread illiteracy, oral culture was everything. News, history, entertainment. It all came in the form of stories told by pilgrims, peddlers, and minstrels. People were accustomed to hearing undevaluating spoken narratives. Your ability to tell a convincing, if boring, story about yourself is a skill that fits perfectly into the culture of your time. You are your own. Very sad. Minstrel, the ultimate performance, the one you must master to survive, is the illusion of pleasure. You learn to produce the sounds, the expressions, the movements that the client expects. This is, perhaps, the most draining part of the job. It's not just the physical act, but the emotional labor of faking an emotional response. You learn to watch the client's face, to mirror his desires, to make him feel like he is powerful, irresistible. This performance is crucial for business. A satisfied customer is more likely to come back, more likely to spend more money, more likely to tell his friends. The madam insists on it. A sullen or unresponsive woman is bad for the brand. Historians and gender theorists are still deeply engaged with this concept of emotional labor in the history of sex work. How did women learn this performance? Was it taught explicitly by the madam, or learned through observation? And what was the psychological cost of this constant faking? The consensus is that the cost was immense, leading to a profound sense of alienation from one's own body and feelings. You are an actress playing the most demanding role of your life for an audience of one. Night after night, you learn to hide things, not just the truth of your past, but physical things. A small coin a client might press into your hand, as a secret tip must be hidden immediately, in your shoe, in a seam of your dress, even in your mouth, until you can find a safe place for it. A safe place might be a loose floorboard in your room or a crack in the wall. This tiny, hoarded wealth is your only hope. It's your getaway fund, though the idea of getting away seems more like a fantasy than a plan. The risk of being caught is enormous. If Agnes or the madam finds your stash, you'll be beaten and the money will be confiscated, adding theft to your already insurmountable debt. This hidden world of gestures, slang, lies, and secrets is the true house you live in. The physical building of wooden plaster is just a stage. The real architecture of your life is this invisible structure of survival strategies. It's a lonely, unprecarious existence. But within this secret language, you find a sliver of community, a hint of shared humanity in the face of overwhelming dehumanization. It's not much, but it's all you have. The dinner bell never rings for you. Or rather, the signal for the evening meal is simply the smell of it, wafting out from the kitchen, and your place in the queue for that meal is a powerful, daily reminder of your status. The house runs on a strict hierarchy, and nowhere is this more visible than at mealtime. The Madam and Agnes always eat first. They sit at the main table, the one closest to the fire, and are served the best of what little the house has to offer. Their meal might include a piece of roasted chicken, a thick slice of bread with butter, and wine that hasn't been watered down. This is a classic demonstration of power, a historical constant from the king's court to the peasant's hut. The best food goes to the top. The quality of your food directly reflects your social standing after the madam is finished. The clients who are present are encouraged to buy food. The pot that's been simmering over the fire all day is finally ready. It's usually a pottage, the staple food of medieval Europe. This was a thick, soupy stew of grains, oats, barley, vegetables, onions, carrots, cabbage, and whatever else was on hand. The quality of the pottage varied enormously. In a prosperous household, it might be thick with meat or fish. Here, it's mostly thin broth and mushy vegetables. A client can buy a bowl of it, and perhaps a chunk of dark, heavy bread to go with it. Only after the clients have eaten, or have decided they're not eating, do the women get their turn. And even then, there's a pecking order. Isabel, who is currently the Madam's favorite because she brings in the most money, might be called over to eat, while clients are still in the room. It's a subtle reward, a public acknowledgement of her value. She gets to eat from the top of the pot, where the few bits of meat or more solid vegetables have risen. The rest of you wait. You wait until the main business of the evening has quieted down, until the pot is half empty. You line up with your wooden bowls, and Agnes, or one of the less busy women, ladles out what's left. By the time it's your turn, as the newest and least valuable member of the household, you are getting the dregs, the watery, flavorless liquid at the bottom of the pot. The bread, if there's any left, is the heel of the loaf, hard and stale. You don't get to sit at the main table. You take your bowl and find a spot on a bench in a dark corner, or on the stairs. You eat quickly, silently. Complaining is unthinkable. You are supposed to be grateful for whatever you are given. This is part of the psychological control of the house. By keeping you perpetually hungry, or at least unsatisfied, the madam keeps you dependent and docile. Hunger is a powerful tool of oppression. This brings us to a strange and little-known detail of medieval food culture, the sops. A sop was a piece of bread that you would dip into your wine or, more commonly, into the broth of a stew like this pottage. For the poor, these sops were often a substantial part of the meal, a way to make the bread less stale and the thin soup more filling. The very word supper comes from this practice of supping on sops. As you dip your hard piece of bread into your thin, gray broth, you are participating in a timeless ritual of the European poor. The nutritional value of your diet is appalling. It's almost entirely carbohydrates, with very little protein, fat, or essential vitamins. This chronic malnutrition would have had visible effects. Your skin would be sallow, your hair brittle. You would be constantly tired, susceptible to every minor illness that came along. Historians who study skeletal remains from this period can often identify the poor and marginalized by the evidence of malnutrition etched into their very bones. Stunted growth, porous bones, osteoporosis, and evidence of diseases like scurvy and rickets. You are, quite literally, being starved into submission. The fairness of food distribution in these houses is a topic that can only be speculated upon by historians, as it wasn't the kind of thing that was written down. But based on everything we know about the power dynamics and the economic realities of the time, the system was almost certainly designed to be unfair. It was a tool for discipline and reward. Did a woman do well with a client? Perhaps she gets an extra piece of bread. Was she sullen or disobedient? She might get no food at all. Her performance was directly tied to her chance of staving off the worst pangs of hunger. As you finish your meager meal, you can see the clients at the main table, laughing, drinking, tossing scraps to the dogs that roam the floor. You are keenly aware of the gulf between their world and yours. They are here for pleasure, for a brief escape. For you, this is not an escape. This is your reality. The food you've just eaten is not for your enjoyment. It is fuel. It's just enough to give you the energy to get through the rest of the night, to serve the next client, to earn a few more coins for the madam's purse. The gnawing emptiness in your stomach is a constant companion, a physical manifestation of your powerless and precarious place in this house. You are always the last to eat, and you are never, ever full. In the damp, crowded confines of the house, another constant threat hangs in the air, as real as the wood smoke and far more dangerous. Sickness, the common cough, the fever, the rash on the skin. These are not minor inconveniences. In a world without antibiotics, without a germ theory of disease, any illness could be a death sentence. And your workplace is a perfect incubator. You hear it every night, the dry, hacking cough from one of the other women. Maybe it's Celia Nor, who always seems to have a cold. You yourself feel a constant, low-grade fatigue that goes beyond simple tiredness, the lack of proper nutrition, the chronic stress, and the physical demands of your work have weakened your body's defenses to a perilous degree. This is a basic historical truth of poverty in any era. The poor are always the first to get sick and the last to get treatment. The variety of ailments you are exposed to is terrifying. From the clients, you can contract any number of skin diseases and what were vaguely termed venereal afflictions. The most feared of these was the Great Pox, or syphilis, which began to sweep through Europe in the late 15th century. But even before that, there were other sexually transmitted infections, like gonorrhea. Though they weren't understood as such, they were just seen as a sign of sin or a type of corruption of the flesh. A woman who showed visible signs of such a disease, sores, rashes, and discharge, was a damaged asset. The madam would not be pleased. From the general living conditions, you are at risk of everything else. The contaminated water from the well could give you dysentery. The bloody fucks, the lice in your strom mattress could carry typhus. The rats that you sometimes hear skittering in the walls could bring the plague. A terrifying and ever-present possibility that haunted the medieval mind. Your house, with its transient population and questionable hygiene, is a node in the city's network of disease. A place where infections can easily jump from person to person. When you do get sick, what happens? There is no sick leave. There is no doctor who will come to see you. The madam's response to your illness is purely economic. If you have a minor cold, you will be expected to work through it. A coughing, feverish woman is less appealing to clients, which means you are a less profitable investment. You might be given the worst chores, kept out of sight until you recover. If the illness is more serious, you become a liability. You are consuming food and occupying a bed without generating any income. This is where you encounter the world of medieval medicine. It was a bizarre cocktail of folk remedies, herbalism, and religious superstition. If you were lucky, one of the older women, like Isabel, might know some traditional herbal remedies. She might make you a tea from yarrow to reduce the fever, or a poultice of comfrey for a wound. This kind of folk medicine is a fascinating and often underestimated part of history. Many of these herbal remedies, passed down through generations of women, actually had real, if limited, medicinal properties that modern science has since validated. But you might also be subjected to treatments based on the theory of the four humors, the idea that the body is governed by blood, yellow bile, and black bile, and that illness is caused by an imbalance. A doctor, who would more likely be a traveling quack or a barber surgeon, might be called in only as a last resort, and his fee would be added to your debt. His treatment might involve bleeding you with a lancet or applying leeches to draw out the bad blood, a practice that would likely leave you weaker than before. The question of how brothels manage disease, particularly sexually transmitted ones, is a subject of intense historical debate. Some city regulations, as we've mentioned, required periodic inspections of the women. But how thorough or effective were these? The inspectors were usually male city officials or surgeons, and the process was likely humiliating and degrading. And what happened to a woman who was found to be sick? The regulations often stated she was to be removed from the house. But removed to where? There were no public hospitals in the modern sense. She might be sent to a leper house if her sores were mistaken for leprosy, or simply turned out into the street to die. The brothel was a business, and it had no room for unprofitable inventory. You live with a constant, low-level fear of your own body, of its potential to betray you. Every cough, every ache, every itch sends a jolt of anxiety through you. You watch the other women for signs of sickness, not just out of concern, but out of self-preservation. When Jean develops a persistent rash on her arms, you see the way the madam looks at her, a cold, calculating stare. You see Jean trying to hide it, wearing long sleeves, even when it's warm. You know that her time in this house might be coming to an end, and not in a good way. Your health is not a private matter. It is a condition of your employment, and its failure means a swift and merciless termination. In this house of constant risk, there is one fear that eclipses all others, a deeply personal and terrifying possibility: pregnancy. Your entire livelihood, your very presence in this house, is predicated on your body being available for the clients. A pregnancy ruins that. It is the ultimate professional disaster. The biological realities of your work make it a constant threat. While medieval people certainly had some understanding of contraception, the methods available were a hodgepodge of folklore, superstition, and occasionally effective herbalism. They were not reliable. You might hear whispers from the other women about certain herbs that could be drunk as a tea, like Queen Anne's lace or sophium, though the latter, a highly effective ancient contraceptive, was likely extinct by your time. There were also physical methods, crude barriers made of animal intestines or sponges soaked in vinegar, but these were expensive, difficult to obtain, and their effectiveness was spotty at best. A more common form of contraception was simply avoiding the act during the times a woman was thought to be most fertile. But medieval understandings of the menstrual cycle were hazy and often completely wrong. The grim reality is that you are playing a game of chance every single night. This is a crucial historical point. For most of history, sex was inextricably linked to the high probability of procreation. The separation of the two is a very modern luxury. When your monthly bleeding is late, a cold dread begins to creep into your heart. You wait. You pray to saints you barely believe in. You try to tell yourself it's just the poor diet, the stress, a common irregularity. But as 1 week turns into 2, the fear becomes a certainty. You are pregnant. This is a secret you must keep for as long as possible. To reveal it to the madam would be catastrophic. A pregnant prostitute is useless to her. At best, she will turn you out into the street immediately. At worst, she will keep you working for as long as you can hide it, then beat you for the deception and turn you out anyway. Your debt will not be forgiven. You will be cast out, pregnant, penniless, and with a debt still technically owed to a woman who will never let you work it off. So you hide it. You cinch your waist tighter, hoping to conceal the small, growing swell of your belly. You endure the morning sickness in silence, vomiting into the gutter in the pre-dawn hours so no one sees. You feel the other women watching you. Their gaze is a mixture of pity and professional distance. They know the signs. They have seen this happen before. Isabel might discreetly slip you a piece of ginger root to chew on for the nausea, a small act of solidarity. But no one can help you with the larger problem. What are your options? They are few, and all of them are terrible. You could try to induce a miscarriage. This is where you enter the dangerous underground world of the local wise woman or abortionist. This woman, and it was almost always a woman, would have knowledge of powerful and dangerous herbs. She might give you a concoction of penurial, savin, or tansy. These herbs are abortifacients, but they are also poisons. The dosage had to be exact. Too little, and it wouldn't work. Too much, and it could kill you, causing catastrophic internal bleeding or organ failure. This brings us to a grim, little-known fact. Many of the herbs used to induce abortion were the same ones used by executioners to administer poison. Seeking an abortion was a life-threatening gamble. And, of course, It was a mortal sin in the eyes of the church and a crime in the eyes of the law. The debate among historians about the prevalence and success of medieval abortion is ongoing. We know from church court records and penitentiary lists that it happened. Priests were given specific instructions on the penances to assign for it, that we don't know how common it was, or how many women died in the attempt. It was a secret, des brute, and its history is written in whispers. If you cannot or will not risk an abortion, your other options are even bleaker. You could carry the child to term, hiding it for as long as possible. But then what? An unmarried mother was a pariah. A prostitute with a child was unthinkable. You might be able to leave the baby on the steps of a local church or a monastery, hoping it will be taken in as an orphan. Infanticide, while a horrific thought, was a desperate reality for some women. A grim choice made in the face of absolute hopelessness. The foundling wheels and orphanages established by some churches were a direct response to this tragic problem. You are trapped. Every option is fraught with danger, sin, and sorrow. The child growing inside you is not a joy, but a ticking clock, counting down the moments until your life here implodes. You feel utterly alone, caught between the biological reality of your body and the brutal economic reality of your profession. The madam may own your labor, but this consequence, this terrifying, life-altering consequence, is yours and yours alone to bear. The weight of it is heavier than any debt on her ledger. Just down the street from your house of sin stands the parish church. Its stone spire dominates the skyline, a constant, silent judgment on your existence. On Sundays, you can hear the faint sound of its bells, calling the good people of the town to prayer. That sound is a weekly reminder of the world you are excluded from. Your relationship with the church is the most profound paradox of your life. The official doctrine of the church is clear and uncompromising. You are a sinner. Your work is intrinsically evil, a mortal sin that puts your eternal soul in jeopardy. The preachers and moralists of the day use figures like you as cautionary tales. You are the gate of the devil, the temptress who leads good men astray. You are Mary Magdalene before her repentance, a symbol of carnal corruption. This condemnation is a heavy psychological burden, a deep-seated part of your cultural DNA. You have been taught your entire life to fear the fires of hell, and now you are told you are living a life that leads directly to them. But the reality on the ground is far more complicated and hypocritical. As you know all too well, the men who visit you are often the same men who sit in the pews on Sunday. The client who pays for your time on Saturday night might be the same man who piously takes communion on Sunday morning. And as we've discussed, in some places, the church itself is your landlord, profiting from the very sin it condemns. This glaring contradiction is a cornerstone of your world. This leads to a mainstream historical understanding of the medieval church's attitude. It was one of pragmatic containment. Theologians like Thomas Aquinas and Augustine of Hippo argued, reluctantly, that prostitution was a necessary evil. Their famous analogy was that a brothel in a city is like a sewer in a palace. It's foul and disgusting, but if you remove it, the whole palace will be filled with filth. They argued that your existence, contained and regulated, prevented worse sins, like the respectable women of the town being harassed or men turning to even more unnatural acts. So, the church tolerated you, not out of compassion, but as a form of social sanitation. You are the designated sewer for the city's lust. This official tolerance has strained tangible effects on your life. For instance, in some cities, prostitutes were still expected to attend church, though they were often forced to sit in a designated sinner's pew at the back. You might be required to pay the tithe, the 10% tax on your income, to the local priest. Imagine that, giving a portion of your earnings, made in sin, to the very institution that condemns you for it. Here's a bizarre detail that perfectly captures this ambiguity. The horse tax. In some regions, particularly in France, local lords or even religious institutions had the right to levy a special tax on brothels. The money was collected, and in a twist of pious laundering, it might be used to fund a new chapel, buy candles for the altar, or even pay for a priest's vestments. Your sin is literally being woven into the fabric of the Holy Church. The debate among historians about the lived religious experience of medieval prostitutes is fascinating. Did these women internalize the church's condemnation completely, or did they develop their own alternative forms of faith? Some scholars argue that many of these women likely had a strong, if unconventional, devotion to certain saints. Mary Magdalene was a particularly powerful figure. She was one of them, a sinner who was personally forgiven by Christ. Praying to her was not just an appeal for divine mercy, but an act of identification with a saint who understood their plight. The Virgin Mary, as a symbol of compassionate motherhood, was another source of comfort, especially for women facing the terror of an unwanted pregnancy. You might have a small, crudely carved wooden token, a secret rosary, or just a whispered prayer that you cling to. Your faith is a private, desperate affair, disconnected from the formal rituals of the parish church. It's a personal negotiation with God, a plea for understanding in a world that offers only condemnation. You are seeking mercy from a heaven whose earthly representatives have, at best, a complicated and self-serving relationship with you. Sometimes, a zealous friar might come to the brothel, not as a client, but as a preacher. He will stand in the common room and deliver a fiery sermon, calling on you all to repent, to abandon your wicked lives. He speaks of hellfire and damnation. The madam tolerates it, as it makes her look pious. You and the other women listen in silence. Your face is impassive. What does his call to repent and leave even mean? Where would you go? Who would take you in? His words are hollow because they are not attached to any real, tangible offer of help. He offers salvation in the next life, but no solution for the brutal realities of this one. And so you live in the shadow of the church spire, caught in a web of sin, profit, and hypocrisy. You are both condemned and necessary, both reviled and tolerated. God, it seems, is everywhere and nowhere at once. His gaze feels less like one of loving grace and more like the ambiguous, calculating stare of your landlord. The Lord, much like the church, has a contradictory and deeply frustrating relationship with you. It is a constant presence in your life, yet it rarely, if ever, serves your interests. The city watch, the local magistrate, the tangled web of civic ordinances, they are all part of the system that controls and contains you, but not the system that protects you. On one hand, your existence is officially sanctioned. A well-established historical fact is that many medieval cities had legalized, zoned, and regulated brothels. The town council of a place like Nuremberg or Florence would issue detailed statutes, boardel house or inn, that laid out the rules. These laws dictated where the brothels could be located, usually in a specific street or district, away from the respectable parts of town, what hours they could operate, and even what prices they could charge. From a legal perspective, your house is a legitimate, if undesirable, business. The madam pays her taxes and her licensing fees, and in return, she is allowed to operate. This regulation provides a thin veneer of legitimacy. It means you are not, technically, a criminal just for being here. You are part of a recognized, if lowly, profession. But this legal status is a cage, not a shield. The laws are not designed to protect you, the worker. They are designed to protect the public from you. They are about maintaining public order, protecting the property of honest citizens, and ensuring the trade in sex doesn't spill out of its designated container. For example, the law might stipulate that you cannot stand in the doorway of the brothel to solicit clients. You cannot wear certain fine clothes, like silk or fur, which were reserved for the upper classes under some petty era laws. You cannot be seen in the main marketplace after a certain hour. These laws are all about controlling your visibility and your behavior outside the walls of the house. You are legally permitted to exist, but only in the shadows. When the law does interact with you directly, it is rarely in your favor. If a client refuses to pay, you have almost no legal recourse. You can't exactly sue him in the magistrate's court. The madam might send a couple of hired thugs to rough him up, but that's an extra-legal solution. If a client becomes violent and injures you, will the city watch arrest him? It's highly unlikely. The authorities would probably view it as an occupational hazard, a private dispute within a disreputable house. Your word against his, a prostitute's against his citizens. is no contest at all. This brings up a fascinating untragic detail found in some medieval court records: the rape of a prostitute. Legally, in many places, it was incredibly difficult, if not impossible, for a prostitute to successfully bring a charge of rape. The prevailing legal theory was that by her very profession, she had given a kind of permanent, universal consent. Her body was considered public property within the context of her trade, while some legal codes did technically allow for the possibility. For example, if she was assaulted outside of a paid transaction, the social and legal hurdles to proving it were insurmountable. The law saw you as a body for sale, not a person with the right to bodily autonomy. The debate among legal historians on this topic is nuanced. They argue about the subtle differences between, say, English common law and Roman law traditions in various parts of Europe. Was there any place where a prostitute had a better chance of seeing justice? The consensus, sadly, is that while the letter of the law might have varied slightly, the practical reality for women like you was universally bleak. The legal system was a tool of the patriarchal, property-owning class, and you were at the absolute bottom of that structure. The madam, however, knows how to use the law to her advantage. Her legal status as the brothel keeper gives her immense power over you. The law backs up her right to set the rules of her house. It backs up her right to collect the debts you owe her. If you were to run away, she could, in some jurisdictions, actually report you to the authorities as a runaway debtor. The city watch that would not help you if you were assaulted would suddenly be very interested in finding you to return you to your master. So you learn to see the law not as a source of protection, but as another arm of the madam's authority. The city watchman who patrols your street is not there to keep you safe. He's there to make sure you stay in your place. He might even be a regular client, a fact that makes the power imbalance even more stark. You live within a cage built of laws. The bars are invisible, made of statutes and social norms, but they are just as strong as iron. The law sees you. It defines you. It taxes you, but it does not protect you. It only holds you in place, in a life that is almost entirely controlled by others. From the moment you wake to the moment you collapse into a fitful sleep, where do you find a scrap of time that is truly your own? These moments are rare, precious, and often stolen. They are the tiny cracks in the structure of your servitude, and in them, you must find a way to remain a person. Your day is packed with chores, your night with clients. There are no scheduled breaks, no days off, but the rhythm of the business is not constant. There are lows. A slow afternoon when the weather is bad and no one is out. A late night, hour after the last drunken client has stumbled home. But before the punishing morning chores begin, these are the moments you live for. They might only be 15 minutes long, an hour if you're lucky. What do you do with this stolen time? You don't have many options. You can't leave the house. To be seen on the street alone, especially in your work clothes, would be to invite trouble, so your free time must be spent within these same oppressive walls. It's a strange kind of freedom, a freedom confined to your cage. Perhaps you find a quiet corner of the common room, away from the others, and you simply sit. You stare into the dying embers of the fire and let your mind drift. You might think of your home, of the faces of your family. At first, these memories are sharp and painful, a constant reminder of what you've lost. But over time, you may find yourself pushing them away, a deliberate act of mental self-preservation. To dwell too much on the past is to be consumed by grief. So you learn to think of nothing at all, to achieve a state of blankness, a mental white noise that drowns out the pain. Or maybe you do the opposite. You seek out the company of the other women. In these quiet moments, the professional rivalries can sometimes soften. You might sit with Isabel and Jean, not talking about work, but sharing stories. Not the fake stories you tell the clients, but small, true things. A funny thing a client said, a complaint about the lumpy porridge. You might delouse each other's hair, a common and intimate activity in this era, a practical act that becomes a moment of quiet bonding. These small conversations, these shared complaints, are the threads that weave a thin tapestry of community. This is a key point that social historians emphasize. Even in the most oppressive environments, People find ways to build relationships and create meaning. Whether in a prison, a workhouse, or a medieval brothel, humanity has a stubborn tendency to seek connection. These fleeting moments of camaraderie are not just a way to pass the time. They are an act of resistance against the dehumanizing nature of your work. Here's a small, poignant detail about leisure in the Middle Ages. Games were a huge part of life. People played dice, chess, checkers, or drafts, and a variety of card games. It's highly likely that you and the other women would have had access to a set of dice or perhaps a worn, greasy pack of cards. In your stolen moments, you might huddle together for a quick game. The stakes would be tiny, not muddy, which you don't have, but maybe the loser has to take the winner's turn emptying the chamber pots tomorrow. These games are not just a distraction. They are a way to create a world with your own rules, your own winners and losers, for a few precious minutes. It's a tiny pocket of autonomy in a life of total submission. The question of what these women did for fun is a difficult one for historians to answer, as it wasn't deemed important enough to record. We can only speculate based on what we know of popular culture at the time. Do they sing? Almost certainly not the same professional tunes, alien, or plays for the clients, but perhaps the bawdy folk songs that everyone knew, the ones that made fun of priests and pompous lords. Laughter, in this house of sorrow, would have been the most precious and rebellious sound of all. You might also have a secret, treasured possession, not the stash of coins you hide, but something with no monetary value. Perhaps it's a smooth stone you picked up from a riverbank long ago, its coolness a reminder of a different life. Or maybe it's a tiny, faded scrap of embroidery from your mother's dress. You keep it hidden, wrapped in a bit of cloth, at the bottom of your straw mattress. In your moment of stolen time, you might take it out and just hold it, feel its texture. It's a tangible link to your former self, a proof that Marguerite is not all you are. It's a secret anchor in a swirling sea of anonymity. These moments are your oxygen. They are what keep the spark of your individual self from being extinguished completely. They are not enough to change your situation, not enough to bring you happiness, but they are just enough to allow you to endure. You hoard these scraps of time like a miser hoards gold, knowing that they are the only true wealth you have left. Sometimes, on a slow afternoon, the madam might grant a rare privilege, a trip to the public bathhouse. This is not an act of generosity, it's a business decision, a mandatory deep cleaning for her assets. But for you, it's a brief, complicated escape from the claustrophobia of the brothel. You walk there as a group, with Agnes herding you like a flock of grubby sheep. You wear your plainest clothes and keep your heads down. The bathhouse, or stew, is often located in the same district as the brothels, a testament to the close, and often overlapping, nature of these two businesses. The bathhouse is one of the most fascinating and misunderstood institutions of medieval urban life. For us, a bath is a private, daily ritual. For you, it's a public, weekly, or monthly, if you're lucky, event. You enter a large, steamy, noisy hall. The air is thick with the smell of hot water, wood smoke, and wet bodies. The sound of splashing and shouting echoes off the damp stone walls. Public bathhouses were social hubs. Men and women often bathed together, though sometimes on different days or in separate sections. It was a place for gossip, for business deals, and for relaxation. For the average citizen, it was a welcome escape from the grime of daily life. You and the other women from your house stick together. You pay the fee, which is, of course, added to your debt ledger, and are given a thin linen towel. You undress, your movements practiced and devoid of the self-consciousness a respectable woman might feel. Your body is your work tool. You are used to it being sane. You wade into the large, heated pool. The water is not clean. It's a communal tub, used by dozens, if not hundreds, of people before it's changed. You try not to think about it. The warmth is what matters. It soaks into your bones, easing the constant ache in your back and limbs. For a few minutes, you can just float, feeling the water support your weight. A rare moment of physical relief. But the bathhouse is not just a place for bathing. It's also a place of business. This is a well-documented historical fact. Many bathhouses doubled as brothels, or at least as places where liaisons could be arranged. The term stews, which was used for the brothel district in London, was also the word for bathhouses, and the two became almost interchangeable. So even here, in this place of cleaning, you are not truly off the clock. You might be approached by men. The rules are different here. It's a more relaxed, informal setting. A man might offer to buy you a cup of wine or some food, which was often served to bathers on floating wooden trays. He might want to hire you for a private room, which many bathhouses had available for an extra fee. The madam has given you strict instructions. Any money you make here belongs to her. Any arrangements must be approved. You are still under her authority, even outside the walls of the house. This leads to a strange, little-known detail of the bathhouse economy. The scrubber, bathhouses employed attendants, often women, who would offer to scrub your back, wash your hair, or even give you a rough massage for a small fee. This was a legitimate, if lowly, job, but the line between a scrubber and a prostitute was often incredibly blurry. For many poor women, working as a bath attendant was a step away from, or a part-time supplement to, sex work. The ambiguity of the space allowed for this blending of roles. As you sit in the steamy water, you watch the complex, social ballet of the bathhouse. You see merchants making deals in one corner, a group of apprentices playing a rowdy game in another. You see respectable wives chatting, trying to ignore the more illicit activities happening around them. The bathhouse is a microcosm of the city itself, a place where all classes and professions mingle in a state of semi-undress. The question of how these different social groups navigated this shared, intimate space is something historians still puzzle over. Was there a strict, unspoken etiquette, or was it a place of constant, low-level social tension? The answer is likely both. For you and the women from your house, it's a place of temporary community. You scrub each other's backs, helping to wash away the grime of the past week. You talk more freely than you can in the brothel. Your voice is lowered so Agnes can't overhear. You might compare notes on clients or complain about the madam. It's a brief, steamy island of solidarity, but the escape is always temporary. After an hour or two, Agnes rounds you all up. You dry off, put on your rough clothes, and step back out into the cold air of the city street. The feeling of cleanliness, of warmth, is already beginning to fade. You are heading back to the house, back to the stale air and the lumpy mattresses. The trip to the bathhouse was not a luxury. It was maintenance. You have been washed and scrubbed, made ready for another week of work. The brief illusion of freedom evaporates like steam in the cold winter air. The church bells ring out, not for a regular Sunday service, but with a more insistent, festive clang. It's a holy day, a feast day. Perhaps it's the feast of Corpus Christi, or the saint's day for the city's patron. For most of the town, this is a day of celebration, a break from the drudgery of work. There will be processions in the streets, special foods, and a general air of communal joy. For you, it is one of the most isolating days of the year. The Brothel does not close for the holiday. In fact, it's often the busiest time. The men of the town, free from their work obligations, have more time for leisure and more inclination to spend their money. The house fills up earlier than usual, the noise level rising with the intake of celebratory ale. The performance you must give on these days is one of heightened cheerfulness, a garish parody of the genuine festivities happening just outside your door. You must be merrier, laugh louder, and pretend you are sharing in the holiday spirit. This is a fundamental truth about your existence. You are a part of the town's celebrations, but you are not a participant in them. You are a service provider for the holiday. Like the man who roasts the ox or the brewer who taps the special cask of ale, your role is to facilitate the pleasure of others, not to experience it yourself. This creates a profound sense of alienation. You can hear the sounds of the procession passing in the street, the singing, the music, the laughter of children. These sounds filter through the shuttered windows, a ghostly reminder of a life you cannot access. You are only a few feet away from it, yet it feels like it's in another world. The hypocrisy of the situation is at its most potent on a religious holiday. The very men who may have knelt in pious reverence during the mornings Mass are the ones who stumble into your common room in the afternoon, their piety forgotten. The sacred and the profane are not just living side by side in your city. They are doing business with each other. The holiday, meant to celebrate the divine, becomes one of the most profitable days for the trade in carnal sin. Here is a specific, colorful detail about medieval festivals that highlights your exclusion. During major processions, the various guilds of the town would march together, each with their own banner, their own special costumes. The bakers, the weavers, the goldsmiths, they would all display their professional pride in their place in the civic order. There was, of course, no banner for the prostitutes. You have no guild, no official place in the parade. Your profession is the one that must remain in the shadows, even as it profits from the holiday crowds. The nature of your clientele might change slightly on a feast day. You get more strangers, pilgrims passing through on their way to a shrine, or peasants who have come into the city from the surrounding villages to see the sights. These rural clients can be a mixed blessing. They are often more naive, easier to part from their money, but they can also be rougher, less accustomed to the rules of the urban brothel, and more prone to treating you like property. Historians who study medieval popular culture are still debating the true spirit of these festivals. Were they genuinely pious occasions, or were they, as some contemporary accounts from moralists suggest, just an excuse for drunkenness, gluttony, and debauchery? The answer, most scholars agree, is that they were both at the same time. The medieval world did not separate the sacred and the profane as rigidly as we do today. A religious festival was a deeply spiritual event that could also involve a great deal of very worldly, very raucous behavior. The brothel was simply the unofficial, unaccompanied endpoint for some of that festive energy. As the day wears on, the forced merriment begins to take its toll. Your face aches from smiling. Your throat is raw from laughing at jokes that aren't funny. You watch the other women, and you see the same strain in their eyes. Isabel's wit seems sharper, more brittle. Eleanor's lute playing is more frantic, less melodic. You are all working twice as hard to maintain the illusion of a party. Late at night, after the last reveler has been sent on his way, a deep, exhausted silence falls over the house. The common room is a wreck, littered with empty cups and spilled wine. The air is thick and stale. You and the other women begin the work of cleaning up, your movements slow and heavy. The festive bells have long since fallen silent. The only sound is the swish of your brooms and the clatter of dirty dishes. This is the true meaning of the holiday for you. It's not a day of rest, but a day of extra work. It's not a day of inclusion, but a day that highlights your exclusion more starkly than any other. You haven't celebrated anything. You have simply survived another, more demanding shift as you climb the stairs to your bed. You know that tomorrow the town will go back to its normal routine, its piety restored, and you will still be here, in the shadows, waiting, night after night. You hand over your earnings to Agnes, day after day. You watch her make another charcoal mark against your name for food, for lodging, for a needle and thread. The concept of your debt, which was an abstract threat when you first arrived, has now become the central, governing reality of your life. It is a suffocating, invisible weight. You have no idea what the real numbers are. You are likely illiterate, and even if you could read the names on the ledger, the symbols for the amounts are the Madame's own private shorthand. You are completely at her mercy, dependent on her honesty in a system designed for dishonesty. This is the engine of your entrapment, a classic system of debt peonage that has been used to exploit labor for centuries. The core principle is simple. Ensure the workers' expenses always exceed their earnings. Let's break down the grim mathematics. The madam has charged you for the clothes on your bed, the straw in your mattress, and every meal you eat. The prices she sets for these items are, of course, wildly inflated. A bowl of thin porridge might be charged to your account at the cost of a meat pie. A worn-out dress is priced as if it were new finery. Then there are the fines. Did you spill a cup of wine? That's a fine. Were you sullen with a client? That's a fine. Did you sleep too late? A fine. These penalties are arbitrary, unpredictable, and designed to keep you permanently off balance. Meanwhile, your income is fixed. You don't get to keep the money the clients pay. That goes directly to the house. You might think that if you are more successful, if you attract more clients, you could pay off your debt faster. But the system is designed to prevent this. The more money you bring in, the more the madam sees you as a valuable asset. She has no incentive to let you go. She might reward you with a slightly better dress or a ribbon for your hair, but the cost of that gift will be added to your debt at an exorbitant rate, sinking you even deeper. This brings us to a sadly common, little-known accounting trick of the medieval era, the tally stick. In the legitimate world of finance, a tally stick was a piece of wood where debts were recorded by notches. The stick was then split in half lengthwise, with the debtor and creditor each keeping one half. The unique grain of the matching notches made it a simple, effective, and tamper-proof record. Your ledger is the opposite of a tally stick. It is one-sided, opaque, and entirely controlled by your creditor. You have no matching half. You have no proof. The psychological effect of this endless, unpayable debt is devastating. It fosters a sense of hopelessness. Why work harder if it doesn't make a difference? Why dream of leaving when the numbers on the ledger make it impossible? This learned helplessness is a powerful tool of control, more effective than any physical lock or chain. It keeps you compliant because the alternative, believing you can escape, is too painful to contemplate. Historians who study the economics of sex work in this period are constantly grappling with the question, did anyone ever actually get out? The records are sparse, as the lives of these women were rarely documented after they left the brothel. The academic consensus is that leaving was incredibly rare. For most, the debt was a life sentence. You worked until you were too old, too sick, or too worn out to be profitable. But the idea of paying off the debt, the fantasy of it, is kept alive by the madam. It's a motivational tool. She might occasionally tell a story about a girl, years ago, who was so diligent and obedient that she earned her freedom. Be like her, the story implies. And maybe, just maybe, you can do it too. This myth of the one who made it out is crucial. It gives you just enough hope to keep going, to not give in to complete despair. It's a mirage in the desert, but you crawl toward it anyway because it's the only thing you can see. You see the effects of this debt on the older women. You see the deep, weary resignation in Isabel's eyes. She's been here for years. She is the most successful of all of you, the Madam's favorite, but she is no closer to leaving than you are. Her success just means she gets slightly better food and is entrusted with more responsibilities. Her reward for being a good worker is more work. She is trapped by her own competence. The debt is more than just a financial arrangement. It's a moral one in the twisted logic of the house. You owe the madam for saving you from the street. You owe her for your food and shelter. This language of obligation is designed to make you feel a sense of gratitude, to frame your exploitation as an act of charity on her part. It's a profound psychological manipulation. You are not just a debtor. You are an ungrateful child, and so you work, night after night, to pay off a sum that you will never know, on a ledger you will never see, in a currency of shame and hopelessness. The only thing you know for sure is that every morning, you are a little deeper in the hole. Time in this house moves in a strange, circular rhythm. The days and nights bleed into one another, marked only by the changing faces of the clients and the endless cycle of chores. But beneath this repetitive surface, a linear, unforgiving clock is ticking, the clock of your own aging, in a profession that prizes youth above all else. Every passing year is a step toward obsolescence. You see it happening to the other women. You notice the new, fine lines around Isabel's eyes, the ones that don't disappear when she stops smiling. You see the way Haley and Noah's once quick movements have become slower, more deliberate, her joints aching from the cold and damp. Your own body, which felt so resilient when you first arrived, now carries a permanent, low-grade weariness. Your early 20s, which should be the peak of your vitality, feel like middle age. The brutal reality is that your market value is directly tied to your youth and appearance. A fresh face, a young body, these are the most valuable commodities in the house. The madam knows this. It's why she is always on the lookout for new girls, fresh from the countryside, just like you were. A new girl brings in new clients and reinvigorates the interest of the old ones. This is a fundamental aspect of the prostitution cycle that historians and sociologists have documented across many cultures and eras. A woman enters the trade young, often in her mid to late teens. She has a few peak earning years, from roughly age 18 to 25. After that, as she begins to show the inevitable signs of aging, stress, and poor health, her value begins to decline. She is no longer the premium product. As you get older, you notice a subtle shift in the way you are treated. The Madame's gaze, which was once calculating but attentive, becomes more dismissive. The most lucrative clients, the wealthy merchants who are willing to pay more for a younger companion, are steered toward the newer girls. You are assigned the less desirable clients, the older men, the ones who are drunken and sloppy, the ones who pay the least. Your earning potential dwindles, which, in the cruel logic of the house, makes it even harder to make a dent in your ever-growing debt. To combat the visible signs of aging, you resort to small, desperate measures. You use more of the cheap, greasy rouge to hide the sallowness of your skin. You learn tricks to arrange your hair to conceal any thinning, but these are temporary fixes, like patching a rotting garment. The underlying fabric is wearing out. This fear of aging is amplified by the lack of any social safety net. In the respectable world, a woman's value might increase with age as she becomes a matriarch, a respected mother and grandmother. She has a family to care for her in her old age. You have no such prospect. Your family is this house, and it is a family that will discard you as soon as you are no longer profitable. Here's a small, sad detail about medieval demographics. Life was short for everyone, but it was particularly short for the urban poor. While a nobleman might live to be 60 or 70, a person in your position would be lucky to see 35. The combination of malnutrition, disease, violence, and the physical and psychological stress of the life meant that old age arrived very, very early. A woman of 30 in a medieval brothel would have been considered an old-timer, a veteran on the verge of retirement, though not by choice. The question of what happened to retired prostitutes is one that haunts historians, because the records largely fall silent. Where did they go when the madam finally told them they were no longer of use? Some scholars argue that a very small, very lucky few might have saved up enough of a secret stash to set themselves up in a demanding trade, perhaps as an ill wife, a laundress, or a seamstress. But this would have required a level of health, luck, and capital that was almost impossible to achieve. The competition with the younger women becomes more acute. It can breed a bitter resentment. You see a new girl, fresh-faced and naive as you once were, and you feel a complex mix of pity and envy. She is a threat to your livelihood, a living reminder of your own fading youth. This internal division, pitting the older women against the younger ones, is another way the madam maintains control. It prevents solidarity and keeps everyone focused on their own precarious position in the hierarchy. So you work harder. You try to be funnier, more charming, more accommodating, to make up for what you are losing in physical appearance. You develop other skills. You become a better listener, a more convincing actress. But you know you are fighting a losing battle. You are on a slow, downward slide. Every morning you look in that cloudy piece of polished metal, and you see the face of a woman who is running out of time. The house that has been your prison is slowly becoming a place that has no more use for you. The fear of being inside the walls is gradually being replaced by a new, even greater fear, the fear of being thrown out of them. The heavy oak door at the front of the house is not locked during the day. You could, in theory, simply walk out, but where would you go? The thought of escape is a constant, flickering flame in the back of your mind, a desperate what-if. You spend your quiet moments considering the possibilities, the theoretical paths that led away from this life. They are few, and each is fraught with its own kind of peril. The most common fantasy, the one shared in whispers among the women, is marriage. The dream is that a quiet, a kind and wealthy merchant will fall in love with you, He will be so taken with your beauty and your gentle spirit that he will overlook your past. He will pay off your debt to the madam, rescue you from this life, and make you his respectable wife. This is the ultimate Cinderella story for a woman in your position. This is, of course, almost entirely a fantasy. While it wasn't strictly impossible for a former prostitute to marry, the social stigma was immense. A man who married a public woman would face ridicule and a serious loss of social standing. It would have to be a man who was himself an outcast, or one who was so besotted, or so foolish, that he didn't care about the consequences. This is a well-documented historical reality. A woman's honor, tied to her chastity, was a crucial part of her value on the marriage market. You, by your profession, have no such honor left in the eyes of society. A more realistic, though still difficult, path was to find a long-term protector. This wouldn't be marriage, but a form of concubinage. A wealthy man, a merchant, a nobleman, even a high-ranking cleric, might decide to set you up in your own small apartment, away from the brothel. He would become your sole client, providing for your food, lodging, and clothes. In exchange, you would be exclusively his. This was a significant step up from the brothel. It offered a degree of privacy, better living conditions, and freedom from the nightly lottery of clients. The famous courtesans of Renaissance Italy represent the pinnacle of this path. However, for a common brothel worker like you, becoming the kept mistress of a powerful man was still a long shot, a 1 in 1,000 chance, and your position would be precarious, entirely dependent on his continued favor. When he grew tired of you, you could find yourself right back on the street. The most straightforward escape route, theoretically, is to pay off your debt. This is the official path out. If you could somehow save enough money from secret tips, or if you had a family member who could come up with a lump sum, you could buy your freedom from the madam. The problem, as you know, is that the debt is a moving target, a phantom number designed to be unpayable. The madam holds all the cards. Even if you presented her with a bag of coins, she could simply invent new fees, new fines, and declare that it wasn't enough. The question of whether these debt release transactions were ever handled fairly is a point of academic debate. The scant evidence suggests that it was rare, and that the price of freedom was often impossibly high. This leaves the most dangerous option, running away. You could wait for a moonless night, slip out the door, and just disappear into the city's labyrinthine alleys. This is a tempting thought, but the risks are enormous. You have no money, no possessions other than the clothes on your back, which technically belong to the madam. Where would you sleep? How would you eat? You are a woman alone, without protection. You would be incredibly vulnerable to every predator in the city, and the madam would not take your flight lightly. You are not just an employee who quit. You are an investment that has absconded. She might send men to look for you. If you were caught, the punishment would be severe. A brutal beating to make an example of you to the other women. Here's a chilling legal detail. In some municipalities, a brothel keeper had the legal right to pursue a runaway woman and have her forcibly returned by the authorities. You were, in a very real sense, her property. So you weigh your options, and none of them seem viable. Each path is blocked by a wall of social convention, economic reality, or physical danger. The front door, which seems so tantalizingly close, might as well be 1,000 miles away. It's a door that leads out into a world that has no place for you. A world that will judge you, shun you, and likely exploit you in a different, but equally grim, way. You look at the older women in the house. You wonder what escape routes they considered. What dreams they once had. Have they given up? Or do they still, in their quietest moments, imagine walking out that door? The tragedy of your situation is that the brothel, for all its horrors, provides a perverse kind of safety. It offers a roof over your head, a bowl of thin porridge, and a place within a brutal but predictable system. The world outside that door is a chaotic unknown. Staying is a slow death. Leaving could be a fast one. And so, most women stay. The door remains a potent symbol, not of opportunity, but of the profound lack of it. There is one other door, one other theoretical escape route that is sometimes whispered about in the house. It's a path that leads not to marriage or freedom, but to God. This is the path to the Magdalene Asylum. These institutions, often called Magdalene laundries or penitent convents, began to appear in the later Middle Ages. They were convents specifically created for fallen women, prostitutes, adult heiresses, and unmarried mothers who wished to repent and leave their sinful lives behind. On the surface, they presented a miraculous offer, a sanctuary, a place where you could be redeemed, washed clean of your sins, and live out your days in pious contemplation. The name itself, invoking Mary Magdalene, was a powerful symbol of forgiveness and transformation. The local friar who comes to preach at the brothel might speak of it glowingly. He would describe it as a haven of peace, a loving embrace from Mother Church. He would urge you to abandon your wicked ways and seek refuge within its holy walls. For a woman like you, exhausted, terrified of the future, and burdened by a sense of your own sinfulness, the offer could sound incredibly tempting. It seems like the only respectable exit available. So one day, perhaps after a particularly brutal night or a fresh wave of despair, you make a decision. You will go to the Magdalene house. You slip out of the brothel at dawn, leaving behind your red dress and your mountain of debt. You have nothing but the simple to make on your back. You present yourself at the convent gates. The nuns, dressed in severe, dark habits, let you in. The heavy gates close behind you with a solemn thud, eerily reminiscent of the brothel, or closing for the first time. You have entered a new world, one of silence, bells, and rigid routine. The contrast with the brothel is stark. The noise and chaos are replaced by a disciplined quiet. The air smells of beeswax and incense, not stale wine. The women here, the other penitents, have their heads bowed in prayer. It feels, for a moment, like you have truly been saved. But you soon discover that you have merely exchanged one form of servitude for another. The life of a penitent is incredibly hard. Your day is ruled by the canonical hours, a strict schedule of prayer, work, and silence. You wake before dawn for matins, your knees cold on the stone floor of the chapel. Your primary work is laundering. This is a historically accurate and symbolic detail. Magdalene asylums were famously laundries. The work was grueling, back-breaking labor, hauling heavy baskets of clothes, scrubbing them in caustic lye, wringing them out with your bare hands. The symbolism was blunt. You were washing away the stain of your past sins through hard, physical toil. Your identity is stripped away, just as it was in the brothel. You may be given a new, religious name, Sister Agnes, Sister Teresa. You wear a simple, scruggy habit, a uniform of penitence. Your hair might be cut short, a symbol of your renunciation of worldly vanity. You are expected to perform acts of penance, fasting, long periods of prayer, sometimes even self-flagellation. You are constantly reminded of your former wickedness, your narrative rewritten as one of a wretched sinner saved only by the grace of the Church. The question of whether these institutions were places of genuine sanctuary or simply religious prisons is a subject of intense and often heated debate among historians. Some scholars argue that for many women, they represented a sincere and welcome opportunity for spiritual redemption and a safe alternative to the horrors of the street. They point to records of women who willed their meager possessions to these houses, suggesting a sense of gratitude and belonging. Other historians, however, take a much darker view. They see the Magdalene asylums as a form of social control, a way for the patriarchal church to contain and discipline women who didn't fit into conventional roles. They argue that the choice to enter was often not a choice at all, but a decision made out of sheer desperation. They point to the harsh labor, the psychological manipulation, and the fact that once you entered, leaving was often impossible. The vow you took might be for life. You were, in effect, a prisoner of God. You were surrounded by other women from similar backgrounds, but the solidarity you found in the brothel, thin as it was, is discouraged here. You are supposed to focus on your individual salvation, to contemplate your own sins in silence. The atmosphere is not one of community, but of collective, quiet guilt. As the years pass, the harsh labor and meager diet take their toll on your body, just as the brothel life did. Your hands are round, chapped from the lie. Your back aches constantly. You have found a kind of peace, but it is the peace of utter submission, of the complete erasure of your former self. You escaped the madam's debt ledger, but you are now indebted to God, a debt you will spend the rest of your life paying off through labor and penance. You look out through a high, barred window in the laundry, at the city beyond. You wonder about the women you left behind. Is Isabel still there? Did any of them ever get out? You have found your escape, your final door. But as you turn back to the steaming vat of laundry, you have to ask yourself, is this sanctuary, or just a different kind of cage? Let's turn back from the gates of the Magdalene Asylum. Not every woman chooses that path. For some, there is another way forward, a darker and more cynical form of promotion. This is the path to becoming the new madam. You've been in the house for years now. You are no longer the new girl. You are a veteran. Like Isabel, your youth has faded, and you know your days as a desirable commodity are numbered. You've seen a dozen younger, prettier girls come and go. You survive. You've learned every trick, every angle, every dirty secret of this business. You know how to manage the clients, how to handle the other women, how to keep the ledger. You know the business better than anyone, except, perhaps, the old madam herself. And the madam is getting older. Her hands tremble slightly when she lifts her wine cup. Her sharp eyes are sometimes clouded with fatigue. She relies more and more on you and the other senior women, like Isabel, to handle the day-to-day running of the house. You have become her trusted lieutenant. This is a precarious position. It grants you a small amount of power and slightly better treatment, but it also makes you indispensable, further cementing your place here. This transition from exploited to exploiter is a grim but historically common pattern in systems of oppression. It's a way for the system to perpetuate itself. The most successful survivors are co-opted. Their knowledge and skills turn to the purpose of managing the next generation of victims. It's the ultimate cynical reward for survival. The moment of transition might come suddenly. The old madam might succumb to sickness, the cumulative toll of her own hard life finally catching up to her. Or perhaps she has scraped together enough profit over the decades to actually retire, buying a small, respectable property on the other side of town and living out her days in quiet anonymity. Whatever the reason, there is a power vacuum. Who will take over? It will be one of the senior women. It will be a contest of wills, of savings, from years of hidden tips, and of sheer ruthlessness. Perhaps it's Isabel, or perhaps it's you. You've been smarter, more careful. You've cultivated a relationship with the landlord, with the man who supplies the wine. You've made yourself the indispensable heir. You take over the sturdy chair in the curtained alcove. You are the new madam. The first thing you feel is not triumph, but a strange, hollow emptiness. You have won. You have escaped the nightly grind of selling your body. You will never again have to climb those stairs with a man you loathe. But the price of this victory is that you must now inflict that same fate on others. You look at the new girl, standing before you, trembling, just as you once did. You see the same fear and desperation in her eyes. You know her story without having to ask. You have a choice. You could be kind. You could run the house differently, more fairly. You could abolish the debt system, pay the women a real share of the earnings. But you know you won't. The economic realities of the business close in on you. You have to pay the rent, the taxes, the bribes to the city watch. You have to buy the food and wine, to make a profit, to ensure your own survival and comfort. You must exploit the labor of the women under you. The system is designed to work this way. To change it would be to risk your own ruin. And you have come too far, survived too much, to let that happen. So you hear yourself speaking the same words the old madam spoke to you. You assign the new girl a name. You explain the rules. You point out the dress she will wear and tell her its cost will be added to her debt. You are perpetuating the very cycle that trapped you. This is a topic that fascinates social historians. The psychology of the poacher turned gamekeeper. Do these individuals become cruel because the power corrupts them? Or does the system select for those who already have a capacity for ruthlessness? It's a debate with no easy answers. You become a good madame. You are efficient, pragmatic, and unsentimental. You know which clients to flatter and which to fear. You know which of the women is hiding a coin, and you know how to punish her just enough to make an example without damaging the asset. You are, perhaps, even more effective than your predecessor because you know the wife from the inside. You know every excuse, every trick, every secret hiding place. You have achieved the only form of power available to you in this world. You are a woman in charge of her own small, squalid kingdom. You have security. You have a degree of respect, born of fear. But you are more trapped than ever. You are tied to this house, to this wife, by the demands of the business. You look at the faces of the young women who work for you, and in their eyes, you see a reflection of your own ghost. You have not escaped. You have simply become the jailer, and you know, in the quietest, darkest hours of the night, that this is the most profound damnation of all. And what if you don't become the new madam? What if you aren't rescued by a patron, and you don't make it to the Magdalene Asylum? What is the most common end to this story? The truth is quiet, mundane, and unspeakably sad. You simply wear out. You are in your late 20s, maybe your early 30s, but you look 2 decades older. The pursuit, the endless work, the succession of minor and major illnesses have taken their toll. Your cough is now a permanent, rattling feature of your breath. Your joints ache with a persistent, gnawing pain. You are no longer able to effectively hide the signs of your decline. Fewer and fewer clients choose you. You bring in almost no money for the house. You have transitioned from being a valuable asset to a net loss on the madam's ledger. The end doesn't come with a dramatic confrontation. There is no final, tearful farewell. It's a cold, hard business decision. One morning, the madam, whether it's the old one or the one who was once your sister, calls you over. She doesn't shout. Her voice is flat, matter of fact. It's time for you to go, she says. You might protest. You might bring up the years of service you've given, the money you've earned for her. You might even mention the debt, the rest, imaginary sum you still technically owe. She will simply wave her hand dismissively. The debt was a tool to keep you here and working. Now that you are no longer useful, the debt is irrelevant. She is not forgiving it. She is simply writing off a bad investment. You are given a few minutes to gather your things. But what things? You have nothing. The clothes you wear belong to the house. You are allowed to keep only the simple, worn-out tunic you arrived in all those years ago. You are escorted to the front door, the same heavy oak door you knocked on with such trepidation. It is opened, and you are pushed out into the alleyway. The door closes behind you. The boat slides home, and that's it. Your career is over. You are standing in the street, disoriented. The city, which you have only experienced in brief, hurried trips to the bathish, is now a loud, overwhelming, and hostile environment. You have no money, no skills that are useful in the respectable world, and no one to turn to. Your family, if they are still alive, have likely disowned you or moved on. You are completely, terrifyingly alone. This is the final, brutal reality of your profession. The society that used you, that created a space for your trade, has no plan for you once you are used up. You are disposable. This is a historical truth that cuts across centuries. The system of prostitution is designed to extract the value of a woman's youth and body, and then discard the husk. What do you do now? You might try to find work as a laundress or a scullery maid, but your obvious ill health and your past will make it almost impossible to find anyone who will hire you. Your most likely path is begging. You become one of the anonymous, ragged figures huddled in church doorways, pleading for a coin from the very same citizens who were once your clients. They will walk past you, their eyes averted, refusing to recognize the woman they once paid for. Your invisibility is now complete. This leads to a sad, academic question. Where did these women die? Historians, sifting through coroners' reports and burial records, try to piece together the answer. They were often found in alleys, in abandoned sheds, on the banks of the river. Their deaths were attributed to exposure, starvation, or fever. They were buried in potter's fields, the mares, unconsecrated graves reserved for paupers, criminals, and the unnamed. There is no headstone to mark your passing. There is no one to mourn you. You lived your life in a house full of people, but you will die alone. You are known, in the most physical sense, by hundreds of men, but you will be remembered by none of them. Your name, the one your parents gave you, has long been forgotten. Marguerite was just a professional moniker, and it dies with your career. The only trace you leave on the world is a series of charcoal marks in a ledger book, which will soon be erased to make room for a new name. Your story is a ghost story, not of supernatural spirits, but of the ghost of a person who was used by society and then systematically erased from its memory. You were a necessary cog in the city's machine, and now that you are broken, you have been thrown onto the scrap heap. The house you left behind will continue. The laughter and the lute music will go on. The wine will be poured. The door will open for a new girl, and the cycle will begin again. Your life, your struggle, your small, stolen moments of joy and pain will vanish as if they had never been. You are, in the end, a footnote in a history that was never written about you.